Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us today, we welcome you in. As you can see in my lovely sunny background, this is a perfect time to talk about one of the most famous creatures of the night, werewolves. Werewolves have had a bit of a popular resurgence in pop culture, and that's because werewolves are seen as the counter to vampires. You can trace this back for a while, but it's really a 2000 phenomena thing. In the 1990s, Blade kind of had some sort of influence on it, but realistically, it's more part of the Underworld and Twilight series that really wraps the two up together. Not interested in vampires today. We're going to talk about werewolves. The idea that a human being or an animal can change into each other is another universal constant in the world. The Inuit and indeed the Asians have a myth where, well, I think it's a little bit insulting to call it a myth. They have a tradition where a sea creature can come visit a human on land, and the female ones even like to procreate with the men on land. The trick for the man is he has to hide their skin, whether it's a seal, whether it's a mermaid, whatever it is, so that she stays human and she stays with him. So the idea of one creature transmuting to another is pretty much as old as time. In Korea, there's the tale of the nine-tailed fox who likes to eat men. And she uses her guile and her cunning and lures men to their deaths. But she's also capable of appearing as a quite attractive woman. And indeed, we see this coming up again in modern werewolf movies, where the werewolves are particularly attractive for both sets of their species. Our modern concept of a werewolf really kind of goes back to the Vikings, though. Yes, the traditions exist across the world, but the Vikings really took hold of the idea of one creature being able to turn to another, a man taking on an animal characteristic. Most tribes do something like that. We'll get to that in a moment, but the Vikings inform our modern world. So, what we start with is what the Vikings called the Berserkers. Berserk, bearskin. And it was a tribe, well, not a tribe, it was a group of specialized warriors that believed by putting on a sanctified bearskin, it would give them the powers of a bear. And you have to remember the fighting they were doing, shield against shield, sword against sword. A bear breaking into the lines would be pretty intimidating. The Vikings were naturally intimidating. So the idea that they would have specialized warriors that were trained in shock warfare isn't too far away from the mark. The Vikings were very familiar with wolves and pack hunting tactics and all that sort of thing they could observe out their front doors from day to day. So the idea of turning into a werewolf kind of naturally follows from a warrior being able to adopt a bear's powers. Now this is where the psychological aspect comes into it. One thing we have done incredibly poorly over the past 100 years or so, maybe 200, is establishing boundaries between the war and the peacetime aspects of a persona. If you look at small-scale tribal warfare, you'll see the men, not meaning to be sexist, but generally men are the ones that go to war. There are women, and there have been very effective women, soldiers, generals, fighters, etc. But generally, it's the men that are going to go to war. And before they go for a raid or war or whatever they're going to fight a battle, they would go through rituals. They would purify their bodies. They would make sure they were clear of sin. They were clear of anything that might be holding them back. They were leaving their presence as a a boy, as a husband, as a father, whatever it was behind, and they were becoming a warrior. This is exactly what the Vikings were doing too. By adopting that bear skin, they were leaving that humanness behind. And that animalistic nature was coming out. You are no longer going to be human. You are going to be an animal, savage, fierce, ripping into your enemies, disemboweling them just like a wolf does after the kill. Which is a particularly horrifying image, I might add, because when you watch animals kill each other, they're eating them while they're still alive a lot of the time. I'll just let that simmer in the back of your head for a little bit. The warriors would, of course, go off, fight, victorious or not. When they came back, they would then have to undergo another ritual, which would allow them to leave behind their sins on the battlefield. And it was to take them from that animalistic killing mode back into a husband, a father, a citizen kind of thing. For the Romans, they would have triumphs and parades to honor their citizens. It's something that happens throughout history. The return of the conquering hero is greeted by everybody, goes to the temple, gets blessed, everything is all okay. Well, that's what the werewolf is essentially. It's the psychological principle of adopting this animalistic nature and being able to do bestial things, and then be able to return and live a normal life. Vampires don't go out at night. Vampires are stuck going out at night, whereas werewolves can go out anytime. There's some debate over whether the werewolf has a power to, transform anytime it wants, or it's an involuntary thing. And if we follow through with the war ritual, it's quasi-voluntary. You volunteer for it to happen, but it can only happen at certain times. So the two traditions come together and reinforce each other here. Whereas in 2021 Hollywood, vampires are just going to be out in the middle of the road and transform into their werewolf form and do whatever heroic deed is required of them. I don't know, I don't really watch a lot of the modern monster movie stuff. But the werewolf itself, if we allow it as a purely psychological phenomena, it definitely exists. And it seems to have a lot wider, I don't want to say acceptance, but it's more widespread than we think it is. First of all, how many people identify with a spirit animal? It could be a bear, it could be a dolphin, it could be something not real. Like it could be a dragon, it can be a hippogriff. Whatever you decide to identify, hey, no judgment. That's what animal appeals to you with its strengths. All the power to you. Furries. Society looks down on furries for some reason. Again, I'm not a very judgmental person, and furries aren't hurting anybody, but they are physically doing the exact same ritual. The fursuit ones, I should specify. The ones that put on the full fursuit and go out, they're essentially enacting the same ritual. They're becoming the animal they want to be, whether it's a fox, a wolf, or something of their own creation. They're keeping alive a tradition that's centuries old. Now, the other thing that makes me believe the werewolf idea is the fact that Vikings used to drink a lot of mead, and they had other hallucinogens available to them. Now, my own background is Cornish, and we have apple cider called scrumpies. And there's a lot of stories around scrumpies, including a man that fell down the stairs, broke his leg, walked home, and didn't notice till the next day. Now, I'm assuming while the Vikings were going about their warrior traditions, they were going to work up some liquid courage and get ready to go into battle. Hey, they weren't the first to do it. They aren't the last to do it. No judgment. But Vikings, of course, you picture them with their horns of mead and everything, celebrating, getting ready to go into battle. So, after you're pretty soused and you're excited, you've had some sort of a shaman come out and give his blessing, and somebody puts on a bear suit, yeah, you're going to believe, oh, there's a man that has the power of a wolf or a bear or whatever creature you may imagine. So the traditions of the world are not as insane as we think they might be. And they actually still speak to us to this day, not only in pop culture movies, but in the fact that not only on Halloween, but a lot of us like to dress up as animals in the privacy of our own homes. Werewolves are pretty plausible. Not necessarily the ones that are out hunting at night, but I can't rule them out. Lack of evidence does not disprove a theory. It simply means we don't have enough data. So, can't strike them off the board, and I can show that they exist in a psychological sense. So werewolves, definitely a plausible creature that goes bump in the night. We wish to thank you for joining us for this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and we hope you have a fantastic day.